I'm Edie Lush, Executive Editor at Hub Culture here in Davos 2023. Very pleased to be here with Rhett Power. How are you?
I'm great, Edie. Thank you.
Good to be with you here. I'd love to know what your take on Davos's theme is. Collaborating in a fractured world. How do you take those words?
Well, as an executive coach and somebody that tries that helps people through difficult times as a profession, we've got to learn to talk to each other. We've got to learn to have dialogue. We've got to learn to have cordial dialogue where we respect each other. That's tough in a fragmented world. It's tough when there's so many divisive issues. We've just got to keep doubling down on that effort and trying to continue to work with people that we have differences with. That's hard. It's hard work.
Yep.
But we also have to, the conversations with people who don't want to move and who don't want to have positive dialogue, we've still got to continue to try to talk to those people as well. We've got to continue to have dialogue, try to have dialogue with those people. That's tough, and sometimes it's very easy to just write those people off and to try to marginalize those people. But we still have to bring them into the conversation and try to bring them into the conversation. But that's hard.
Conversation is hard, especially when people differ. You also do a lot of work on accountability, and I wonder how you see that as helping collaboration in a time when we face a tsunami of crises, when organizations face so many different challenges and a changing environment as well.
Accountability, I believe, is fundamental for progress. I think it's fundamental for organizations, whether government or companies. I do a lot of work around it. My company's called Accountability, Inc. We try to help companies understand what accountability is, and I believe it's a value system, not just a word. I think it's a value. It's a way you have to live. You have to own up. Now, let me back up a second. We often look at accountability as a negative word, right? It's kind of a scary word because we've been taught that accountability is only comes into play when you've done something wrong.
Right.
I'm trying to change the narrative around that word because it can be a positive too, right? When things go right, we're accountable for that too, right? And so I don't think it has to be such a scary word. There are lots of examples of companies that are doing this well. Patagonia is a company that is we've heard a lot about recently, but they're living into their beliefs. They're living into their mission and accountability. They're taking advantage of that, and it's built a culture at that organization where people they want to work there. They want to be part of what Patagonia is trying to do. So that's a great example of a company that's living into accountability.
It sounds like they're taking the challenge and making it, turning it into a more positive experience, as you say,
right,
and using it then to sort of power themselves
right
forward. So what are some of the steps that you can take if you're encouraging a company or somebody you're working with to use this slightly different view of accountability? Well,
look, the fact is leadership and management is changing. COVID has taught us a lot of lessons. Number one, the expectations of our employees and how they work and where they work has changed. COVID has also taught us that compassionate leadership is important. We've also learned that how many people are so unengaged in our workplace that they're quietly quitting. That's a new sort of word that we're hearing a lot about. So we've got to think about leadership in a completely different way. And I believe building an accountable organization where we rethink how we do performance metrics and performance measurement. The old ways are not going to work because they're biased. They don't work. They don't help people understand in real time how they're doing. So I believe that organizations, I've kind of lost your question and sort of drifted here, but
it's all right, we can drift and then come back to the shore.
But the fact is, building an accountable culture where everybody understands what's expected of them, what the mission of the organization is. They're held accountable for their successes and their failures, and they're empowered to make decisions and do things. So those are things that I think can fundamentally change an organization. Number one, accountability can help you create a got your back culture, not a watch your back culture in your organization.
Interesting. Give me an example of something that you've seen. You mentioned Patagonia. Any other organization that maybe you've seen change from one that didn't hold itself accountable on either of those measures, failures or successes, and now does?
There are lots that I work with. I'm working with a company right now that no one's probably ever heard of, but it is a $50 million company, a family-owned company, and I probably shouldn't mention the name.
It's all right.
But we're helping them put in an accountability system in their organization, and it has absolutely transformed their culture. People now, they've had in the last year, they've had they've had higher retention. They've had higher employee engagement scores. They've scrapped their old yearly, quarterly reviews. They've instituted this meeting structure that we do around accountability. We call it an accountability review process. Ford is another one that actually transformed. Alan Mulally used the system very similar to ours and transformed Ford back in 2000 when he was the CEO of Ford. Took it from a $6 billion loss to a $16 billion profit by the time he left, and used a very similar system.
Interesting. Thank you so much for stopping by the Hub Culture Studio. And I'm Edie Lush.